Morning, brethren. Welcome to another daily devotional. We're thinking again about why death is gain for the Christian. We're thinking of those words of the Apostle Paul that we find in Philippians chapter 1. For me, to live is Christ, to die is gain. Yesterday we saw that death is gain for the Christian because at death they go to be with the most wonderful person. Here this morning I want us to think that death is gain for the Christian because they go to be in a most wonderful place. The Apostle Paul in verse 23 talks about departing and being with Christ, which is far better. The language that he uses there, that word depart, is beautifully graphic and full of meaning. It's a picture of a ship being tied up at harbour, and the time comes for the ship to leave and to sail to another destination. The ropes that have held the ship to the port for whatever length of time it's been there are now unbound, and they're let go so that the ship is now free to sail to its other destination. The same word is also used to describe the Bedouin moving from one place to another. In Paul's day, Bedouins would have set up tents and they would have put the cords into the ground to hold up the tent. And then whenever the time came for them to move, they would have struck camp. In other words, they would have pulled up the pegs, they would have taken down the cords, and they would have moved on. They were pilgrims on a journey. And this world is for the Christian a place of pilgrimage. We're not really here to stay, we're here to go. The temporary lodging place for the Bedouin is a bit like what this world is to us as Christians. Here on earth, Paul was surrounded by sin, he was surrounded by wickedness, he was surrounded by evil and unrighteousness. He himself had temptations to envy and slander and greed and malice and deceit and violence, and it was going on all around him. And he witnessed all of this and he experienced it in his own experience. But Paul knew that in heaven there would be no more such temptations. There would be no more greed and malice and deceit and violence. He also knew there'd be no more tears, no more sorrow, no more weakness, no more pain, and best of all, no more sin. He was going to a place of perfect righteousness. And in order to enter that place, Paul himself would be made perfect in holiness. You remember the Shorter Catechism. The souls of believers are at death made perfect in holiness. The apostle who wrote the letter to the Hebrews in chapter 12 and verse 23 talks of the souls of those who at death are made perfect. Paul knew that when he died, he was going to a place where he would no longer be plagued with that awful experience of failure and inconsistency in his Christian life that he wrote about in Romans chapter 7. The good that I want to do, I don't do. The evil I don't want to do, that's what I do. He knew that in heaven, no longer would his service of Christ and his love for Christ be marred with sin. Yes, it was a wonderful prospect. For me, Paul says, to die is gain. Why? Because he was going to a most wonderful place. And friends, that's true of us also. If we're Christians, this is the prospect that awaits us. We're destined for a wonderful place called heaven. And as you look around you today, the world in which we live in the 21st century, and we observe the way the world is going with all its sinfulness and all its wickedness and all its evil, surely as a Christian, you're looking forward to heaven. Yes, life here can be good, often is good, but how much better will life be in heaven? So Paul says, for me, to die is gain. He knew it was gain because he knew when he died he was going to be with the most wonderful person, Jesus. He knew that when he died he was going to be in a most wonderful place, heaven. And this morning, tomorrow morning, we're going to see another reason as to why Paul regarded death as gain.